I would say yes, an Indian and a foreigner can be happy together. Hello, friends. Namaste, dosto. My name's John, and I have an Indian wife. And this is July 2024, and December 2024, we will have been married for 8 years. Now, when I was thinking about getting married to an Indian, I had some American friends who told me that they would never get married to someone from a different culture because marriage is already difficult, and getting married to someone from a different culture would make it even more difficult. But I decided before I got married I was going to talk to other people who were married couples from different cultures. And what they told me was the differences in their cultures were not what caused the biggest problems in their marriage. They said it was actually the normal things that are a problem in a marriage anyways. So for example, you have communication, you have expectations, money can be a problem in marriage. It was just the normal things that can cause problem in marriages, not the cultural differences. And now that I've been married to an Indian for almost 8 years, I can agree that the cultural differences are not what has caused the biggest problems in our marriage. It's more of just the normal things, communication, expectations, the differences between a wife and a husband. Those are the things that can cause problems in a marriage. Now, I would say we have a very good marriage, a very happy marriage. And I would also agree that marriage is not easy. There's been difficulties. We always have to work on our communication. We always have to continually working our marriage, trying to make it better. But since I know a lot of you want to know about the cultural differences, I first want to say that I actually lived in India for 3 years before I got married to an Indian. So I think that helped me to understand the differences between Indian culture and American culture. So if you're thinking about getting married to an Indian, or if you're an Indian thinking about getting married to an American or whatever, I would definitely recommend maybe being in their culture for some time so you have an idea of what the differences will be. Now, living for 3 years in that culture did not prepare me to everything, right? I mean, culture is a wide subject, and 3 years was not enough for me to understand the culture completely. I don't even understand my American culture completely. But I would say it definitely helped in me understanding what kind of differences we were going to have in our marriage. Now, I also want to say that we are the same religion. We did not change our religions just to get married to each other, and we are not different religions. We have the same religion. In my opinion, I think that's kind of important, because I think if two people from different religions and they take those religions seriously get married, I think that would make marriage really difficult, because religion it's your worldview. It's how you view the world. So I just want to let you know we are the same religion. So some cultural differences in our marriage that can be difficult are, one thing is that Americans are very independent and Indians are a little bit more dependent. And I'm not saying one culture is wrong and one culture is right. It's just a difference. And so there has had to be some adjustment. I think, well, my wife is going to be independent and she's going to be able to do all these things, make independent decisions and independently do all these things. And she does have some independence, but I have learned, and I'm just going to keep this general. I might not give some examples. If you want examples, you can ask me in the comment section. I learned over the years that she is just dependent in some ways that I was not expecting, and I've had to grow to accept that, and I'm okay with that. I also want to say, we have different cultures, but each individual is also their own culture. So, I am usually an easygoing, laid-back person. I can accept differences, like cultural differences, maybe a little bit easier than maybe some other people. It's not as difficult to me. I'm very patient. Maybe getting older, maybe less patient, I don't know. But that's also important to think about. One thing, I know some Indian men tell me that they would like to get married to an American. Well, you have to keep in mind that American women are more independent than your average Indian woman. So you might have some difficulty with that. You might expect your wife to be very dependent in so many ways, and she wants independence and able to make her own decisions and do her own things. So that's something to think about if you want to get married to an American woman. Also, Americans can be somewhat individualistic, and Indians not so much. So like Americans, when a married couple celebrates their anniversary, Americans will go just by themselves to like a restaurant or go somewhere by themselves, nobody else. In India, when you celebrate an anniversary or a birthday or something, it's with the entire family. It's with everybody. So we've been able to kind of compromise on that actually and do both. Sometimes me and my wife will go somewhere by ourselves and eat at a restaurant, and then we'll come back where our family is and we'll celebrate that way. So we kind of do both cultures in that respect. Now, I would say one of the more difficulties and cultural differences has happened recently. Over a year and a half ago, we had a baby named Asher. Well, in American culture, it is very common for the parents to train the baby to sleep in a separate room and to go to bed early, like maybe 7 or 8 o'clock. And then the parents have the rest of the night to themselves, which sounds amazing. But in Indian culture, and I know some Indians are going to say, well, I don't do that. Okay, maybe not all Indians do this, but I have witnessed and I have seen a lot of Indians, they prefer the baby to sleep in the bed with them, and baby doesn't go to bed until the parents go to bed. So everyone goes to bed together. Once again, Americans being kind of individualistic and Indians not being individualistic. Well, I'm not saying one culture is right or wrong, but now you have two cultures together deciding what are you going to do. And I would say this has been one of the bigger issues in our marriage, but like I said, I'm usually easygoing and I can adapt to things. And I knew that she was going to do that, that she was going to desire that Asher sleep in our bed. I talked to many Indians way before we got married, and they all talked about their children sleeping in the bed with them. So, but it is a difficult thing. I guess I am a little bit selfish. By 8 o'clock, I would love to not think about, when is Asher going to go to sleep? Oh, he's asleep now. I have all this time by myself. Nope. Instead, we're thinking, okay, it's, 10 or 11, and we still kind of need to entertain Asher. We still have some time before we all go to bed. That makes things a little bit more difficult. I even thought maybe going to bed with a child in my bed would be very dangerous, which it can be, but I mean, India has over 1.5 million people, so apparently they know how to do it and make sure that it's not dangerous for the baby. It hasn't been dangerous. There's been some nights where I don't sleep so well. Sometimes Asher wakes up, makes some noise, or he moves, and I can feel him moving. That has been a difficulty, but I would say overall it hasn't been too bad. I knew it meant a lot to my wife to be able to do this, so I thought, okay, we can do this. We can have the baby in our room, in our own bed, sleeping with us. But also, I've been trying to encourage her the benefits of having him sleep in another room also. So when maybe, I don't know, we'll see. Maybe when he turns about 2, we would like to encourage him to sleep in a different room and then maybe even go to bed earlier. So you see, once again, there's a little bit of compromise. We start out doing it more of the Indian way, and then once he gets older, we'll do it maybe a little bit more the American way. Now, stay tuned. Is that going to happen? I don't know. I hope so, but if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. Honestly, that's just it. It's not the end of the world. Okay, a baby sleeps in our bed with us. Our child sleeps in our bed with us. Is that worthy of divorce? No, it's not. I've adjusted to it. I've done it for over a year and a half now. There's not really any problems, really. Every time I have that little inkling or thought, this might be a little bit better if he could sleep in a different room. Or she says, I think it'd be really better if we at least start out the Indian way. She's taking care of Asher most of the day, so I think it was better to start out that way. Now, just to talk about the normal problems any marriage can have. I would say one of the biggest things that keeps our marriage happy is that we both have belief in God, and we both want to love God and to be pleasing to God. I would say that is by far one of the most important things about our marriage. It's not about us being selfish and having our own expectations. It's about us being focused on God outward and on God's expectations, living for His standards. Now, one reason that's really important is because sometimes a wife and a husband can live as if they think their spouse is their God, and so they want all the joy, everything. They have these huge expectations, like God-like expectations on their spouse, and that makes marriage really difficult because our spouses are going to fail us because they're not God. And so I realize that my wife is not God, and she realizes that I'm not God, and our expectations for ultimate joy are in God and not each other. Now, also, I say we want to please God. Well, that also affects how we live, because if we aren't living in a pleasing way towards each other, then we're not pleasing God, right? And we want to please God. So our first thoughts go upward. Are we pleasing God? Yes, we are in these areas. Oh no, we're not pleasing our spouse, so we're not pleasing God. So let's please our spouse also. Be kind to our spouse. Just live in such a way that would be pleasing to God, which is also a way that would be pleasing to our spouse. So now, communication. When I first was about to get married to my wife, I spoke to her some in person, and we did a lot of texting, sending SMS to each other, speaking on social media. But when we got married, I thought, what if maybe, now I can speak some Hindi, but it's not perfect. And so she was a little bit worried about, are you going to be able to talk to my father? Because her father doesn't know any English at all. Her mother and her sister do. But so she was worried about that. But now that we've been married, I can communicate with him pretty well. He speaks Hindi really fast. But we've been married for almost 8 years now, so I've been able to understand the way he speaks. But also, I was thinking before we got married, I hope my wife can speak. I heard her speak English. I typed to her in English a lot, but I thought, oh no, what if I find out that her English isn't the greatest? But her English is excellent. Her English is way better than my Hindi because she went to an English-speaking school. So I think that's really, obviously, speaking a common language is crucial to marriage. So I mean, I can't imagine if you got married to someone you couldn't communicate. Now, her English is really good, but every now and then there's a breakdown in her English and my English. So yes, that can kind of cause some problems in communicating, but once again, it's not a deal breaker, and we've just worked at those things. I have learned to understand like what she's saying, and I can ask, what do you mean by that? And we've gotten good at communicating that way. But there's always miscommunication in a marriage, right? There's always going to be that, no matter what. So before we got married, I talked to a man who was an American man who was married to an Indian, and he also gave me some advice. He said, every time you make a decision, especially a big decision, both of you make the decision together and agree on it, which is good advice for any marriage. But he said especially if you have an Indian wife. Maybe I'm not going to go into more detail about that, but I mean, I think it was good advice. I usually try to remember that, and I try to do that. Something else we do in our marriage, from the very beginning, I said we really need to admit when we are wrong and to ask each other for forgiveness, which is not an easy thing to do. Even though I said that's what we're going to do, it wasn't easy for me. The first time I was upset at my wife, or the first time she was upset at me, I wanted to say, well, it's not my fault. It's hard to say it's my fault, but both of us have gotten much better at that. When one of us is upset, when we have upset the other spouse, we have gotten much better at saying, you know what, I was wrong. It was my fault. Could you please forgive me? We've gotten really good at that, and I think that helps a marriage in general. Even if you're from the same culture, but it definitely has been important to us in our marriage. But I would say besides that, the cultural differences haven't been that big of an issue. There are really small things so in America, it's common to walk in have your sandals on outside and to walk in your house, You don't do that in India. You take your sandals off. You have some inside sandals. You even have like bathroom sandals. I thought, okay, that's fine. Actually, that's even better because it keeps your house nice and clean, right? In America, your house can get kind of dirty from your shoes and your sandals. So I've adjusted to that, and she has adjusted to some American things also. You know, there are some things that we do that are more American, I would say. So these are just a few thoughts right now, just off the top of my head. I might make another, if I think of something else really important, I might make another vlog also in the future. If you have any questions, I like making vlogs like this and they seem to be doing well. If you have any questions, write them down in the comment. Maybe I'll make a vlog on your question. I'll even give you a shout out. So yeah, I guess that's all for now. Watch my other videos about India and Indian food and anything India. Bye bye, Dosto.